An 80-year-old woman got caught shoplifting and had to face the judge. Judge, what did you steal? Grandma, a can of peaches. Judge, why? Grandma, I was hungry. Judge, how many peaches were in the can? Grandma, 6. Judge, all right, that's 6 days in jail. Before the judge could finalize the sentence, her husband quickly raised his hand. Judge, yes, what do you want to say? Husband, she also stole a can of peas. Someone get this man out of the courtroom before she gets life. One day, when the teacher walked to the blackboard, she noticed someone had written the word P in tiny letters. She turned around and scanned the class, looking for a guilty face. Finding none, she quickly erased it and began to the class. The next day, she went into the room. She noticed in large letters the word P again, this time written about halfway across the board. Again, she looked around in vain for the culprit, so she proceeded with the day's lesson. Every morning for about a week, she went into the classroom and found the same disgusting word written on the board. Each day's larger than the previous one. Finally, one day, she walked in expecting to be greeted by the same word on the board, but instead found the words, "The more you rub it, the bigger it gets." A priest offered a nun a lift. She got in and crossed her legs, forcing her gown to reveal a leg. The priest nearly had an accident. After controlling the car, he stealthily slid his hand up her leg. The nun said, "Father, remember Psalm 129? The priest removed his hand, but changing gears, he let his hand slide up her leg again. The nun once again said, "Father, remember Psalm 129? The priest apologized. "Sorry, sister, but the flesh is weak." Arriving at the convent, the nun sighed heavily and went on her way. On his arrival at the church, the priest rushed to look up Psalm 129. It said, "Go forth and seek further up, you will find glory." A schoolteacher used to take a short nap every afternoon. When his pupils asked him why he did so, he said that he went to dreamland to meet ancient sages. One extremely hot day, some of the pupils fell asleep in the afternoon. When the schoolteacher chided them, they said, "We went to meet the howls in dreamland." "What did they say?" demanded the teacher. "We asked them if a school teacher came there every afternoon, but they said they had seen no such person." After 20 years of shaving himself every morning, a man in a small town decided he had been doing that long enough. He told his wife that from now on, he'd let the local barber shave him each day. The man went to the barber shop, which was owned by the pastor of the local church. The barber's wife, Grace, shaved him and sprayed him with lilac water. "That will be $25, she said. The man thought that was a bit high and wondered how he'd continue to pay such a bill, but he paid for the service and went off to work. The next morning, the man looked in the mirror and saw that his face was as smooth as it had been when he left the barber shop the day before. "Not bad," he thought. "At least I don't need to shave every day." The next morning, the man's face was still smooth. 2 weeks later, the man was still unable to find any trace of whiskers on his face. He couldn't understand it, so he returned to the barber shop. "I thought $25 was high for a shave," he told the barber's wife. "But you have done a great job. It's been 2 weeks and my whiskers still haven't started growing back." The woman's face showed no surprise. "Well, of course," she said. "You were shaved by Grace." Bob and Tim work at Atlanta Airport. Atlanta gets fogged in one night and nothing can take off or land, so Bob and Tim have nothing to do. After work, Bob and Tim usually have a drink on their way home, so Bob says to Tim, "I heard that you can get a buzz off drinking jet fuel." Since they have nothing better to do, they try it. Finally, their shift is over and they get to go home. Next morning, Bob calls Tim and says, "How are you feeling?" Tim says he's fine, never felt better. Bob asks, "Do you have a hangover?" Tim says no. Then Tim says, "Wow, this is great. We can drink all we want and not get a hangover." Then Bob says, "Well, there is one side effect, Tim. Have you farted yet?" Tim says, "No, for why?" Bob says, "I'm calling you from Detroit." Joe and Frank were in the office and noticed that someone had put up a suggestion box with some 3x5 cards next to it. Both decided that this was a great idea and each took a card to fill out. Joe wrote, "The office workers should all be given raises." When he looked at Frank's card, it said, "Can we all have raises and keys to the executive washroom, and personal secretaries, and new company cars, and new coffee cups, and longer lunch breaks, and an extra 3 weeks vacation each year, and a holiday on St. Patrick's Day, and Columbus Day, and Martin Luther King's birthday?" Joe said, "Frank, that isn't the right way of getting things changed around here. You shouldn't put all of your begs in one basket." A little boy in Canada is learning about the world. He is curious about how things work, and one day he goes to his father and asks, "Dad, if big dogs can have little dogs, how come big trains don't have little trains?" Never unprepared, his father says, "Go ask your mother." The dutiful son finds his mother. "Mom, if big dogs can have little dogs, how come big trains don't have little trains?" "Well," she smiles, "why don't you go on down to the train station and ask the conductor?" Off goes the little boy to the station. He sees the conductor in uniform and says, "Excuse me, sir, can you tell me why if big dogs can have little dogs, how come big trains don't have little trains?" The conductor looks down at him. "Son," he says, "here at Via Rail, our trains always pull out on time." First day on the job. And this trainee already knows how to handle the big boss. A man starts his first day as a trainee at a big corporate empire. Feeling bold, he picks up the phone and dials the pantry. "Get me a coffee quickly," he demands. But oops, he didn't dial the pantry. A voice on the other end snaps back. "You fool! You've dialed the wrong extension. Do you even know who you're talking to, Dumbo?" "No," the trainee replies. The voice on the other end huffs. "It's the CEO of the company, you fool." The trainee thinks for a second, then shouts back, "And do you know who you're talking to, you fool?" The CEO, now totally confused, asks, "No, who?" The trainee replies, "Good," and hangs up.